Do both. Give us both. And click like and subscribe to all of the
Absolutely.
places. Yes,
Yes, I've got
do
B
that
Pro
thing.
going full
Okay.
shill mode. Excellent.
Full shill. Click the thing. I don't know what it does for us, but I assume it's good since everyone wants me to do it. Hello and welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 358. I'm one of your hosts, Bryan and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather
Hello, hello.
and the one and only Marco Sanchez.
Hello, everybody.
Haha! I'm really excited about this episode because this is kind of like the last time I have to talk about layers for a while because we've done two YouTube videos for Judge Foundry and then we did the prelude episode of the podcast last time. Oh boy.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of
Yeah,
talking about layers.
it's a lot of talking about layers. Recap of last episode. What we do last episode, so that if you're starting this one out, you might want to go back and listen to the previous episode.
One-shot effects. A lot of one-shot effects. And then we talked about preliminarily what we were going to talk about today. A little bit about layers. We talked about the different layers that exist of interaction of continuous effects, and they are copy, control, text, type, color, ability, modifying, power, and toughness, and then the 4 sub-layers of power and toughness. And we gave a couple of light examples there. But what we're going to do today is we're going to dig into the nitty-gritty of layers, the interaction of continuous effects, and we're going to talk about all of these in depth.
Yes. So, layers is also called the interaction of continuous effects. In last episode, we defined what continuous effects were, in addition to one-shot effects. But now we are going to start racking and stacking these things. And
Yeah, we're going to start putting the chocolate of one layer with the peanut butter of another layer and see what happens on the other end.
And
Don't
then
forget the banana.
the sardines.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah, one too
have-
far.
Gotta have sardines.
One too far. Okay. Okay. So what is a example like? Okay. What's an example where I might have multiple continuous effects trying to do stuff? When's an example that we might need layers?
All right, so we're going to be very specific with some of the examples we're pulling out here. So let's say we have everybody's favorite tutu bear cub on the battlefield, and we also have a divine sacrament, which, if you're unfamiliar, is an enchantment that says white creatures get +1/+1. Simple enough. Also has some other stuff, but that's the relevant part. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the whole card on the screen if you're interested. And we also have an 8.5 tails. Now, 8.5 tails can give protection from white and also says that target spell or permanent becomes white until end of turn. So let's say I activate 8.5 tails targeting my bear cub, turning it into a white creature. But I did that after Divine Sacrament was on the battlefield. Which applies first? Is it a green bear cub that is under the effect of Divine Sacrament and then gets turned white, so it missed its shot? Or does it turn into a white creature and get the +1/+1 bonus that it so deserves?
Yeah, and this is the aspect of layers, because you look at that situation, you go, it says white creatures get +1/+1, bear cub is white, it should get +1/+1. Duh. All right, but like anything in the if you're gonna have the comprehensive rules, sometimes you need to write down duh. Like you need to explain what duh means, and that's really what the layer system is saying like, okay, I thought of a really neat idea. All right, so here's a funny thing I read a while back, which was in the English language we actually have an order of adjectives that everyone just kind of knows,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Sure.
I saw
Right,
this.
you'll say like the strange green metallic ball, but if you say the metallic green strange ball, you kind of it sounds a little weird.
I'm
or
twitching
like
as you said that. Ah.
right, or like the long narrow plastic brush. If you were to say the plastic narrow long brush, it's yeah. All right. So we kind of intrinsically know that there's an order, and it's you know the its opinion, size, physical quality, shape. These are an order that we just know, but it's not really written down anywhere. For the layers, they wrote it down because they have to program it in the computers. Okay? So the layers is just a codified system of figuring out what the correct result is, and the vast majority of times it just yields what you think, right? All right, what's another
Yeah.
example?
So we have another example, and that would be if we had Glorious Anthem on the battlefield. And again, Glorious Anthem gives creatures you control +1/+1. And Bryan would have a bear cub. Now, I could cast control magic, and I have the Glorious Anthem, and grab Bryan's bear cub and take control of it. So does Bryan's bear cub, when I have control of it, become a 3/3, or does it remain a 2/2? Well, that's where layers step in. Control is at layer 2, so we apply that effect first. So I have the bear cub, and then since I have the bear cub, and since I have Glorious Anthem on my side of the battlefield, the bear cub becomes the 3/3. And that's a great example of just a simple interaction that happens frequently enough. Now, one thing Marcus mentioned a little while ago is he just kind of briefly mentioned that YouTube, and if you're watching the YouTube, you can see the cards. I want to just take 2 seconds and just say, hey, please watch the YouTube, because it's going to have the cards on the screen. It's going to have all of that information there. So as you're walking through this journey with us, if you're listening to us on whatever your favorite app is, Spotify or whatever, that's great. We appreciate you. We want you to do that. But, maybe this time, go sit down on a computer or watch on your laptop or whatever, and watch us on YouTube, because the cards up on the screen make a really big difference for shows like this.
Yeah. We will still do our best to
Or
describe
better
it, but-
yet, do both.
Yeah.
Do both. Give us both. And click like and subscribe to all of the
Absolutely.
places.
Yes, I've got
do
B
that
Pro
thing.
going full
Okay.
shill mode. Excellent.
Full shill. Click the thing. I don't know what it does for us, but I assume it's good since everyone wants me to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So
Well, before we
with-
move on,
yeah. Yep.
one thing about this, and I really just want to bash this idea into everybody's head who is watching and listening. This is not a terrifying, super intrinsically complicated thing. Like this example that we have right now, a bear cub under a control magic saying you control it, and a thing that says creatures you control get +1/+1. Of course it gets a +1/+1. Like it's not actually like, there's so many examples, and I kind of challenge everybody to go play a game of Magic and just look at how many continuous effects are interacting with each other all the time while you're playing, because it's way more than you think. It's way more than you realize, and the good thing is it all just kind of works. You know how it works. It does the thing, you're fine. So
Yep.
it's only when like slightly, because the thing is, when I think when you overthink layers a lot, that's when you start getting into those like random loops in your head where you're like, but if I do this, then there's a way that this could do the other thing. Does that work? And 9 times out of 10, your gut instinct is going to be the right one.
I like how you're like, hey man, this isn't a scary thing. It's really, really simple. And then the next thing that we're going to talk about is timestamps, which is like the thing I use looking at in logs at work. All right. So with layers, we have to break down things a lot into their little tiny bits. Okay, we have to break down all abilities that change characteristics or modify controllers into their little tiny atomic pieces. So it's, even though it's easy, it's like chemistry. We all know how much we love chemistry. Chemistry's super easy, right? But anyway, we break them down into their little pieces and we apply them in a very specific order to get the correct results. And to do that, there are 4 tools that we use. There are timestamps that we use to handle effects within the layers to know which ones come first. Then we have the categorization of the different layers themselves to handle effects across the different layers. Okay. Dependencies to handle some weird cases. And then we have dependency exceptions to handle even some of the weirder cases. All right. So first, let's talk about what a timestamp is. What's a timestamp?
So a timestamp is just when this effect started, or really just when this becomes a thing inside the game. I think one of the most obvious timestamps you can have is a creature gets a timestamp as soon as it enters the battlefield. Like this bear cub is now a bear cub as of this time in the game. Like 2 minutes
really,
into the game.
it's not just the battlefield. It's anywhere.
Yeah, that's the first rule of timestamps. An object will receive a timestamp as soon as it enters a zone.
The second rule of timestamps is we don't talk about timestamps.
Yeah, but my joke here is so it's 3:15:20 Eastern Standard Time, correct? No, it's in relation to the rest of the game, right? It's not actually, you're not looking at the clock and saying, oh my gosh, this is the timestamp. It's in relation to the pace of the game and where it is in the game.
We're a Greenwich Mean Time household.
Yes, yes.
It's what happened first, what happened second, what happened third. If you want to think of the timestamp as not necessarily like the time on your atomic clock, you can just think of it as a sequential order based on everything else. That's fine also.
Yes.
Okay. So an object gets a timestamp as soon as it enters a zone. What else? So continuous effects generated by a static ability, okay, has the same timestamp as that object. So earlier, Charles mentioned a glorious anthem. Okay, the glorious anthem gets a timestamp of when it enters the battlefield, and it has an effect that says creatures you control get +1/+1. That effect has the same timestamp as when the glorious anthem entered.
Yep.
Well, the next one's a continuous effect generated by a spell or ability that receives a timestamp at the time that it's created. So, for instance, if you were to cast Giant Growth, which is an instant, and it's giving a creature +3/+3 until end of turn, that is a continuous effect generated when it's cast. So when it resolves, actually, to be specific.
Now, the next one is counters get a timestamp if it's put on an object or player. Typically, because the way the rules are set up with -1 and -1/-1 and +1/+1 counters, typically doesn't matter a whole lot. But now that we've got like flying counters and first strike counters and vigilance counters and stuff like that, it actually might really matter.
Could be relevant.
Right. What else?
Auras, equipment, and fortifications receive new timestamps each time it becomes attached to an object or player. So anytime you're slapping something onto another object, it gets a new timestamp.
Foreshadowing, we will talk about this at some point in time later in the cast. The next one is a permanent receives a new timestamp each time it's turned face up or face down. So this is relevant for morph cards and effects of that nature.
Morph Manifest Cloak and Disguise. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know somebody that has a commander deck with those things in it.
Hey. We don't talk about that in polite company.
It's okay. No, but yeah, whenever an object is turned face up or face down, in that process, it earns a new timestamp.
DFC permanent. It's going to get a new timestamp each time it transforms or converts, because, those transformer cards can't transform. They have to convert.
More than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Yep. And a sticker.
Whoa.
All right. Okay, yeah, okay. But we're done with the actual relevant things in the CR about timestamps. Let's move on.
Yes.
Okay, so one thing to note, real quick, the characteristics of the card itself. I'm not necessarily talking about the rules text, but the no, I actually am. So the continuous, like a static ability doesn't necessarily have a timestamp, but the continuous effect generated by it does. But the characteristics of the card itself doesn't necessarily have a timestamp. Like a bear cub's power and toughness doesn't have a timestamp. It's just the starting value. Valgavoth's color doesn't have a timestamp, but effects that change it would. All right. Another way to think of it is the ability on a clone, the static ability on the clone, the replacement, the static ability that generates a replacement effect. That text doesn't have a timestamp, but the continuous effect it generates does. All right. That is a distinction that will become relevant later when we start talking about some other things. Okay.
Again, it's not really hard. You just have to think about it and lay it out on a chart, which is more fuss than you really want to do half the time, which is, I get it. It's a thing, but
Yep. Okay.
But don't be afraid of it is all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Keep the lights on. It's okay. If two or more objects would receive a timestamp simultaneously, such as if they're both entering the battlefield at the same time, maybe from some type of an effect that pulls them from the graveyard or something like that, then their exact timestamps are determined in app-nap order. That's active player, non-active player. If they're all controlled by the same player, let's say Marcos does this effect and has two cards entering at the same time, then the player who owns them, that would be Marcos, chooses which of the items has the earlier relative timestamp, ordering them however you want. They do have an actual order. So if, return 3 different enchantments to the battlefield at the same time, one is definitely before the other 2, and they have an order of timestamps. And this is really important only when it's important. Does that make sense? Great. No, it exists, right? But it's only important to track when we're really talking about the interaction of continuous effects. Most of the time, we just put these cards on the battlefield and we're like, hey, they're there. But if it's important to call it out, then you have to order it.
I would typically call it out even if it doesn't matter, simply because it might.
Yeah.
Like later.
Sure. But you're returning, let's say you're returning 3 creatures and they don't have any ETBs and they don't have any abilities on them or anything like that. Your average player is going to put them on the battlefield, and that's fine.
Generally speaking, yes.
Right. That's what I'm talking about in those situations.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask
Right.
you, hey, Brian, off of that collected company, which of your 2 bear cubs came in first?
Yes.
Necessarily. No. Right?
Doesn't matter.
Correct. However, if it was they had like type changing effects anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's start going through the layers. Now, as we mentioned in the last episode, the layers are copy, control, text, type, color changing effects, ability modifying effects, and then power and toughness stuff. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to go through each of the layers and briefly give an example of what they are and how timestamps might play a role in that layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start combining layers, or combining continuous effects that cross layers, and see how we can get different results by combining them all.
We're going to get
right.
those sardines in the peanut butter if it kills us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it probably will, because that's disgusting. Who would suggest such a thing? That's terrible. Ew. Sociopath suggested sardines and peanut butter.
All right, so I guess we will start off with copy effects, as that is, in fact, layer 1. And one of the fun things we're going to do here is, like, if I have a question on this, because, like, even we will have moments where we're like, oh, I'm not 100% sure on this, because, like, I'll be really honest with you. Copy effects are one of my weaknesses. So, like, as I go through this, I might be like, hey, B-Pro, what's going on here? Because that's okay. And I want you all to know that that's okay if you have a question while you're going through this kind of stuff, trying to figure it out. Sort it out with people. We'll all get there together.
And we have an episode on copy effects in our JudgeCast library, like a whole episode on all the different types of copy effects. So we're not going to go over all the different types of copy effects here. All for this particular episode, when we're talking layers, is recognizing a copy effect and being able to apply it.
Yep.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Nailed it.
All right.
So when we're going to start doing any kind of layers, we're going to start with copy because it comes first. This is a little bit more than just the copy effects. It includes a few other things that can change the copyable characteristics of an object. But as this is the first layer, this is why we always start with just the card. Before we get to evaluating any other layers, we still have to determine, like, what is the card that we are working with in its existence. You'll normally start off, before applying any layers, just looking at the physical card. Here is our 2/2 bear cub, 1 in a green, creature bear named Bear Cub with no rules text and no abilities. Cool. But then from there, if I cast Clone so that it enters as a copy of a Bear Cub that is currently being enchanted by, let's say, a Witness Protection enchantment aura, I will actually get a 2/2 Bear Cub, because we always evaluate our copy effects before anything else. This is one of those things that when you first start looking at layers might come across as a little unintuitive, because Witness Protection says, hey, I have a 1/1 citizen. This isn't a 2/2 Bear Cub. Why do you get a Bear Cub if I don't get one? Yeah, legitimate business bear. Oh man, I'm just now imagining an AI bear in a suit.
Straightening its tie, with its paw.
Oh, of course.
Yes,
briefcase in one hand, paw on the other, straightening his tie. You can all see it in your head. I'm not putting it on screen.
For those that know me, I am right now mad at Marcos for imagining the AI bear in a business suit. Darn you, Marcos! Please don't.
A little bit. Yeah.
Leave the AI stuff alone.
So anyway, that's the thing. Like the bear on the battlefield right now is a 1/1 legitimate business bear. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I cast Clone, I get a Bear Cub. I don't get a legitimate business bear. I get an illegitimate Bear Cub.
No, that's still a legitimate Bear Cub. That Bear Cub
is a legitimate Bear Cub. It is. And that's because when we start with the layers, because the copy layer is first, okay, we haven't applied any of the other stuff, even though that happened, that Witness Protection happened a while back. Okay, we start at the very beginning. We go, okay, layer 1, nothing else has been applied. Copy Bear Cub.
Yep. So the result of that clone entering, it checks its copyable values. It goes, hey, what is the card? The card is a Bear Cub hiding behind that legitimate business suit. Doesn't matter. Still a Bear Cub at heart. So your clone is going to be a Bear Cub.
All right, so if I cast a Phyrexian Metamorph, cloning a Bear Cub, I have a Bear Cub, except it's an artifact in addition to its other type, so I have an artifact Bear Cub, and then I use Cytoshape, targeting a Fellhide Brawler, which is a strictly worse Bear Cub, making the Phyrexian Metamorph a copy of Fellhide Brawler. Well, there, I have 2 copy effects, and I just apply them in timestamp order. The Phyrexian Metamorph's copy abilities, making it a Bear Cub first, and now Cytoshape is trying to make it a Fellhide Brawler. You just apply them in order, and bada bing, bada boom, I got a Fellhide Brawler.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
No notes.
Yeah. The next little bit, though, is... so copy effects have a little bit of a weird thing going on. So after we figure out the copy effects, okay, the copyable effects, that includes copy effects and changes to an object's characteristics as determined by merging with an object, so all of your melds and Ikoria Mechanic mutate.
Yeah.
All right. That stuff applies. Then we have another layer within copy that if for whatever reason, if it's face down, we just change its characteristics. So no matter what it is, if it's turned face down, it's 2/2. Great. No name, all that stuff. And then here's the little weird bit about layers. That's when we determine the object's copyable the object's copyable values for its characteristics. Is you apply all the copy effects, and then you apply the face downedness, the morphiness, and then those are its copyable characteristics. All right. It's handled a little bit differently. Morph isn't super common. Just remember that, and then we can get into the actual layers that are kind of consistent with the way they behave. And they don't have to have like this weird little and plus being face down rules.
Yeah. So just to clarify, because I want to make sure I'm following along with that.
Okay.
So face down spells and permanents have their characteristics modified. That just means the face down part of it is what's modified. The part that is face up continues to stay the same. Or is that a
no
bad
no
reading
so
of this?
if
'Cause
you're
I wanna
if
make
you're
sure
face down,
I'm understanding it.
so the part that's face down, no, okay, so a face down permanent,
Mm-hmm.
okay, is a 2/2. And this is where it gets a little weird. So if I've got a creature with a copy effect on top of it, okay, I've got my Phyrexian Metamorph that is a copy of Fellhide Brawler after all this stuff has gone on, and then it gets turned face down. It's now a 2/2. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, it was already a 2/2 before, but it doesn't have a name. Its copyable characteristics got modified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that
Okay.
so it's a face down Fellhide Brawler.
Right.
But
And if
what
it
you
gets turned
see-
face up somehow, right. And if I somehow make it another copy, let's say I make it a copy of Craterhoof Behemoth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a copy of Craterhoof Behemoth when it's face down, so it's a 2/2.
Correct.
Okay.
So
And
the
if I
face
have
downness overlays whatever the front face of the card is, because the front face of the card can be changing all you want because it is face down. Those characteristics can change, but this is the part that trips up a lot of people: is that front face that is face down is changing, but it's still a face down creature, which is a nameless 2/2.
Yeah, let's just look at it as it is what it is. It's, you put all the copy effects, whatever that you want onto it, and then it's face down. It's a 2/2. Those are its copyable characteristics. And the problem is if I have a Craterhoof Behemoth that's face down, okay, and then I try to copy that, my copy is a 2/2. It's not a Craterhoof Behemoth that's face down. It's just a 2/2 with no name or anything like that. And this is where I kind of don't want to get into like all the complexities of like copying stuff, but the layers kind of do a weird little hop skip thing when we have to deal with morph. And I don't want the episode to become that. Just be aware
Yeah.
that if you're dealing with morph stuff, you need a little more understanding of what's going on. Okay, cool. Can we go on to control effects?
I think we can.
Okay.
All right. So let's do that. Control effects. And these are, after all of that, relatively easy. At least our first example is. Let's say player A, you're in a three player or 4-player game. Player A controls a bear cub, lovely little 2/2 bear cub, just sitting there all by himself. Player B says, "Hey, I need that bear cub as a defender, so I'm going to cast control magic and take control of player A's bear cub." Player C sits there and says, "Well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander," plays Agent of Treachery, and decides to take control of the bear cub that player B has. When this all shakes out, we apply timestamps just as we would with anything else in the same layer. And player C ends up being the person that controls the bear cub, even though there are two different control effects that are happening at the same time. It's not like the bear cub is going to be rendered under King Solomon and split asunder. But if you do that, I want video.
What? No, that's
it's
terrible. You
Well,
don't do
if you're
that to a bear cub. It's a monster.
I know, I'm a goblin. I mean, what do you want? But no, the bear cub does end up in control under player C. Neat.
Yep. So if you've done a lot with layers, you've probably heard about dependencies. And they're not the boogeyman that they're made out to be. So here we go with a little tiny prelude to show you how dependencies are. Let's change this scenario a little bit. Okay, player A controls a bear cub. Player B casts control magic, gaining control of the bear cub. And then player C, instead of casting an Agent of Treachery to gain control of the bear cub, they cast Confiscate, which which is enchant permanent, says you control enchanted permanent. They cast confiscate on the control magic. Okay, what should be the result based on expectations? Okay, like if we were to go in straight pure timestamp order, A controls a bear cub, B plays the control magic, gaining control of the bear cub. So B has control of the bear cub, and then C casts confiscate on the control magic. So the result is B controls the bear cub, but player C controls the control magic.
That's weird.
And that is weird.
That don't
All
make
right.
no sense.
Right.
I would have thought it would be the other way around, that by controlling the confiscate, you control the bear cub.
Right. But the confiscate's got the later timestamp. So here we have what's called a dependency, because the confiscate is changing what the control magic is doing. Okay. Let's see here. The exact wording for dependencies is an effect is said to depend on another if it's implied within the same layer, which these are, and applying would either change the text or the existence of the first effect, what it applies to, or what it does to any of the things that it applies to. And in this particular case, the what it does to any of the things it applies to is the relevant part. The confiscate changes who's gaining control, who the you is in you control enchanted creature on the control magic, right? So, super simple, super illustrative way of applying a dependency, and you probably didn't even realize that's what you were doing, except for the fact that we told you. All right, that's control effects. What else we got?
Next up, we got text changing effects, and these are actually super rare. You're not going to see text changing effects very often. They're barely in standard. Modern barely has any of them, but they do exist. So lately, you've more seen them in specific mechanics more than just about anything else. But let's talk about anything that specifically says change the text. In this example, we control an Animar, and you cast Glamour Die, changing the text of target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another. So here we're going to change white to red. And then later, you cast Mind Bend, which replaces all instances of black to blue. So you apply these effects in timestamp order, as we know, and Animar has protection from red and blue instead of from white and black. And one big thing about text changing effects is they are going to say change the text of, or refer to the text in some way, shape, or form. But
yeah, typically they have the word text in them. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Text, they might refer to the rules text, or just specifically all instances of a word changing, like on Overload. That says change all instances of the word target with the word each. But otherwise, you're usually looking at like color words, basic land types, things like that. But, surprise, there are things that are text changing effects that you might not think of. For example, we already talked about this card earlier, Witness Protection. Witness Protection changes the name, and that is a text changing effect as well. So this is changing, specifically it says, enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a green and white citizen creature with base power and toughness 1/1 named Legitimate Business Person. It loses all its other names, and now we are changing the text of its name to Legitimate Business Bear. Business Person. You know what we're doing. So that is text changing effects in a nutshell.
All right.
That's that. Cool. All right, so we've done copy, control, text. What's next? Type. This is where we change things that live within the type line of the card, the middle of the card in most cases. Of course, we have other card frame styles that will move it around. But basically, these effects will change, add, edit, remove the card type, the subtype, the super type of the card, or any combination of the three. And how that all works, we're going to get into because there's some real nitty gritty detail with this. But typically, whenever an effect sets a card type, it's replacing any existing types that are there. So if I turn a creature into a land, then it will only be a land, not both at the same time.
If you're wanting some rules on, like, more on the type changing effects, we have in our L1 series up on YouTube. We go over on the card types episode. We go into a little more detail about all the rules for what it means when you change a type.
Right. The same also goes when we're talking about this. The same also goes true for subtypes. If you replace a subtype, it replaces all the other existing subtypes on that object. So you turn a bear into a frog, it'll just be a frog. It won't be a bear frog. Bear frog. That'd be great. As always, there are some exceptions to these rules, but that's the standard rule. For example, if you change the card type of an instant or sorcery, it will still retain its type. Do we have an example of that?
I looked, and I don't know of a way to do that. I think that might be one of those things that's in the CR because you have to account for it.
Is it catch-all? Yeah, one
I
of those
think so.
catch-all rules. Yeah.
No,
I think so.
Or is there an actual example?
Or it's a
I
very
ran
narrow one
across
that I could
this-
not find one.
I ran across this just like a month ago and was like, "Oh, that's why." And then promptly was like, "That'll never come." It was like,
That'll never
"Oh,
come
that's why." Oh well, it was.
Yeah, it's extremely narrow. Like, if you ever think about it or if you ever encounter it, now you know. Write us in the comments. Get in the comments. Drop us a note on YouTube. Let us know in Discord. But it's
somebody
very
that
rare.
knows all of the rules and all the reasons for all of the rules, please let us know. There's also an exception that is specifically for an artifact creature. It's a unique case, and this is one of those, doesn't happen frequently either. But if you turn something into an artifact creature, it retains all its prior card types and subtypes. But why? Why does it do that?
I thought I knew. I thought it was like an old rule from like carried over from like 94, 95 type stuff. I've gotten into discussions with people.
Right.
Yeah, but like someone showed me that it was actually like a CR update in like 2009, 2010 with one of the sets, and it was just like, oh, weird.
Oh, that seems like
Okay.
it was one of those grandfathered in older rules that were like, oh, we're just going to make this a thing because, and just nobody bothered to change it.
It does.
And it may be one of those things where the rules update was like, oh wait, we should have included this, and we're just going to pop it in there now.
I don't think so. But
Magic
who knows?
historians, BDM, get in the comments.
BDM, if you're out there, I really do enjoy the Insta. It's great. Okay, moving on. A major exception here is that when the effect says in addition to other types. If an effect removes a type and there were subtypes that are associated with the original type, those subtypes will be removed along with the card type. So a really good example of that is you turn a bear cub with a creature line, with a type line creature bear into a land with the card imprisoned in the moon, then you don't need to say it's no longer a bear, because without the creature type, there are no creature subtypes that could be associated with it. So bear just no longer exists. That's sad. We like the bear. And then same thing if you turn a planeswalker Jace into a land with the same imprisoned in the moon. Jace, of course, is a subtype of planeswalker, as are all the different planeswalker names. It would simply cease to be a Jace. It would lose its Jace-ness. There's also a unique set of rules specific to the basic land subtypes. If an effect sets a land subtype to one of the basic land subtypes, plains, island, swamp, mountain, forest, doing so will actually remove any abilities generated by the card's rules text, removes any copyable effects applying to the land, and adds the relevant mana ability that's tied to the specific basic land subtype. Important stuff.
Yeah, types is a lot, but that's also because there are so many like waves that go out from when you start messing with the type of a card, because types, if you remember, like there's a specific list of subtypes that are associated with card types. all these different things have to be accounted for. So there's just a lot of rules baggage that comes with changing and modifying the
Yeah.
type line overall, right?
And it happens a lot. Like we like
It
things to
does.
be creatures. So lands that become creatures. Artifacts that become creatures. Maybe, like creatures that become vampires. It's a lot. It's probably the second most common layer, which is why in the L1 series we talked a little bit about type changing effects and a lot more about layer 7. It's because those are the most common. So
Yeah.
let's talk about common examples. Okay, I've got a temple garden, or rather, Marcos has a temple garden. Uh, I cast Spreading Seas on it. Okay,
How
which
dare you?
Spreading Sea says Enchanted Land is an island. And then later, Marcos casts Blood Moon because he's playing that awesome modern deck that runs Temple Garden and Blood Moon. Okay, again,
No, it's because
not to
Marcus
say
is cool. He understands
yeah.
Blood Moon is for the cool kids, and he gets it.
Oh, I know we're doing this for the example, but I am seething. Go on.
All right. So, what is my Temple Garden? Is it an island? Is it a mountain? What is it?
Very confused.
Well, you put the spreading seas on it first, so it's an island. And then Blood Moon would turn it into a mountain. So it's a mountain.
So non-basic lands are mountain. Great. Timestamps all the way through. And let's say I change the order. Let's say I've got a Temple Garden, or Marcos has the Temple Garden, and then Marcos plays the Blood Moon because tech, and then I play the Spreading Seas on the Temple Garden. What's the Temple Garden then?
Well, then it's an island
It's an island, right?
because of the
Timestamps.
timestamps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Island first, it's a
The-
mountain.
the-
Spreading seas next, it's an island.
The
Yep.
most recent thing to happen to it in the game is it got hit with that Spreading Seas, so now it's a very sad blue island. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Temple
And
Garden.
and remember, like you were saying beforehand, Charles mentioned, if you add a basic land subtype, removes all other basic land subtypes and just adds that along with the relevant mana ability. So it's not going to be an island mountain. It's just going to be an island.
Yep. All right. So now let's say Marcos has his Temple Garden, and I have an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Marcos in his odd deck decides to play Blood Moon. Okay. What happens there? If we apply the cards in timestamp order, okay, so we've got Urborg came out first, so it says each land is a swamp in addition in its other types. So my Temple Garden becomes a forest plain swamp. Okay, and then Blood Moon says, nope, you're a mountain. My Temple Garden is a mountain. But it also says that my Urborg is a mountain as well.
They have
because
achieved
Urborg,
perfection.
right?
Well, that could be
Okay.
a problem, couldn't it?
Okay, because yeah, because as we said earlier, if you change a land into another a land into another land type, or just give it a land type, you wipe out all the other abilities. So it is removing the ability that makes it a swamp. Okay, cool. In this particular example, because of if we're applying them in order, that's fine for Temple Garden, and then Urborg is, so they're both mountains. Now let's change that order. Okay. And we say, okay, Blood Moon is first. And we apply Blood Moon first, so that makes Temple Garden a mountain. And then it makes Urborg a mountain. And then it removes Urborg's ability at that particular point if we apply it first. So then when we go to make Urborg, apply Urborg, it's the ability's not there anymore. So in both cases, we were doing something a little weird. And so here is where we have a little bit less intuitive example of a dependency. Okay, this is the dependency poster child, though, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, this is the one we always hear about. We always hear Urborg and Blood Moon in relation to any dependency question the first time you hear about dependencies.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I would look at that and say, okay, well, my Temple Garden, is it a Is it a mountain swamp? Oh no, because Blood Moon removed its ability. And so again, dependency says an effect is said to depend on another if A, it applies in the same layer. Here we're changing type. Okay, that's all we're dealing with. And then applying the other would change the text or existence of the first effect. And so if I apply Blood Moon, first, it's going to blank Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth.
Yep.
And so because it's going to blank Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, we say that Urborg is dependent on Blood Moon. Okay? So we apply Blood Moon first, always, regardless of timestamp. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
When you think it out and you just kind of walk through, it actually isn't too complicated. And I think I'm trying to recognize all the times where I struggled with this as I was learning these kind of things. And I think one of the things I struggled with often with dependencies in general is recognizing what a dependency is. Because oftentimes people would just say to me, oh yeah, well, this is dependent on that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean it's dependent on that? But you really have to break down that rule of dependencies. Like, does it change what it applies to? Does it change the existence of another effect, etc.? Like, when you start thinking about it that way and break down the rule, which, by the way, is CR 613.8a, is the rule that defines dependencies. Once you read through that, you start to see, and just like think of some examples of continuous effects that will apply that way, and you'll start to see, oh yeah, this does depend on that being there for these exact reasons. And we have a few other examples of dependencies, so we won't dive too deep into that. And one last thing before we get away from type changing effects, there is an order in which you apply things under the type changing layer as well. And that specifically comes to characteristic defining abilities. We've talked about this beforehand with power and toughness when it comes to things like Tarmogoyf in our L1 episode. However, there is a characteristic defining ability that does apply in the types layer, and that is the ability of changeling. So changeling will always define the type characteristics of a card. So that always has to apply first, because again, it's just part of the characteristics of that card. It's just an ability that defines it as opposed to you typing out every single creature type on the type line. So changeling will always apply first, and then any other continuous effects that affect your type line will apply after a changeling.
Yep. Yeah, it's basically within we say everything goes within timestamp order. There's actually something that supersedes timestamp in terms of we apply it first regardless of what the timestamp is, and that's characteristic defining abilities. And that happens for type and our next one, color changing effects. Okay, so color changing interactions, you can have something like Wild Mongrel, where you discard a card and it gets +1/+1 and becomes color of your choice. 8.5 Tails that we mentioned earlier, where a target spell or permanent becomes white until end of turn. Darkest Hour, which is just all creatures are black. Okay, so first we apply, when we're talking layers, we apply any color, any characteristic defining abilities that set color. There are not a lot of these anymore because a lot of times the characteristic defining abilities that set color appeared on cards that didn't have a mana cost to them, because color is derived from the symbols in the mana cost. So they would just write out a CDA sentence that says, like, this is blue. And then they replaced them with the little color indicator dot next to the type line. Another example of a characteristic defining ability that's more common is devoid, which just says, hey, this is colorless. Okay, so when evaluating color changing effects, always do the characteristic defining first, and then we go into timestamps of things like Wild Mongrel, 8.5 Tails, Darkest Hour. Okay, and it's kind of hard to come up with a dependency for color changing effects. It would have to be something like all blue creatures are green, and then all green creatures are black. That would be an example of things that you would have to apply them in a particular order regardless of timestamp, because If we say all blue creatures are green, then applying that one first changes what all green creatures are black, what it applies to. All right. That's color changing effects.
Makes sense.
Exciting.
So abilities is another really in-depth layer because we like to give and remove abilities from cards all the time. So at this point, we're going to bring up a couple of cards. So we're going to talk about things like Archetype of Aggression, which is one of my favorite cards when we're talking about abilities because it both grants abilities and removes abilities. So Archetype of Aggression says creatures you control have trample, and creatures your opponents control lose trample and can't have or gain trample. So let's consider that card and consider a battlefield that has a bear cub on it. We consider Archetype of Aggression, and then somebody casts Blind Fury, which is an instant that says all creatures lose trample until end of turn, double all combat damage assigned to creatures this turn. So in this example, if we resolve one of them first and then the other, that actually affects whether our bear cub has trample or not. So if you resolve Blind Fury first and then your Archetype of Aggression, you gain trample after losing it. So our bear cub will have trample, assuming it hadn't in the first place. However, if you have an archetype and then resolve Blind Fury, then your bear cub won't have trample. Pretty easy, right? We're applying things in timestamp order. Another example of this is, for example, Colossus Hammer, which specifically says equipped creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying. And let's say we were to equip the Colossus Hammer to a Spectacular Spider-Man, which has an activated ability that says pay 1, Spectacular Spider-Man gains flying until end of turn. So here, again, we're going to be talking about timestamp order for determining abilities. We're going to equip the hammer onto Spider-Man and then activate his ability to give him flying until end of turn. That Spectacular Spider-Man is going to fly because the Colossus Hammer makes you lose flying, and then we apply gains flying until end of turn. Pretty easy, right? But if we move the hammer off of Spider-Man after we activated that ability that gives it flying, he will still have flying. But then we move the hammer back onto him again, he will then lose flying. Because like we said way back in the beginning, that Colossus Hammer will have a new timestamp when it becomes attached. Get wrecked.
It's so, like, just some of the gyrations we have to go through to make rule example work. It's like, all right, give a hammer to Spider-Man. Now give Spider-Man flying. Now move the hammer. Now give the hammer to someone else. Spider-Man still got flying. Now give the hammer back to Spider-Man, and suddenly he loses flying.
Well, look, in this instance, Colossus Hammer clearly is Mjolnir, and it's being tossed back and forth between Spider-Man and Thor. So, like, it kind of makes sense.
Mjolnir on steroids. Look at that thing. It's huge. That's not Mjolnir. That's like, my good Lord, that's like a
might
car.
be the dwarf that's holding
swinging
just really
a car
tiny.
around.
There you go.
Well, yeah,
it does look
that's possible,
Mjolnir shaped at least.
There is a perspective issue there. I guess.
All right. So the next little bit, let's say we've got an archetype of aggression out. So I've got my bear cub, I've got my archetype of aggression, and Charles, being the blue player at heart that he is, casts Dress Down.
Character assassinations left and right on this episode. Jeez.
Dress Down says a bunch of things, but it also says creatures lose all abilities. All right. So you would go, okay, timestamps. My bear cub archetype of aggression is going to give all my creatures trample, and then Dress Down is going to cause all creatures to lose abilities. Timestamps, easy. Nothing's got trample.
Right.
Easy peasy, right?
Right.
Now let's reverse the order of those two things. I have a bear cub, okay? I have cast archetype of aggression. Okay, so it's on the stack, and for whatever reason, Charles flashes in Dress Down.
I'm impatient.
He is the impatient blue player. Okay, so Dress Down enters the battlefield first, then archetype of aggression resolved. So it's got the later timestamp. So if we just do timestamps, we go, okay, we apply dress down first, and all creatures lose all abilities. And then we go to archetype of aggression, and it doesn't have the ability on it that says creatures you control have trample. That seems a whole lot like one of the other situations that we had. Yes, this is actually a dependency situation. Okay, so because applying dress down first changes the existence of archetype of aggression's ability, it is a dependency, so we're always going to apply dress down first. Ta-da! Okay, so again, not super scary. Dependency, not a big deal.
I'm confused. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm confused.
Why are you confused?
Especially at the very end.
Why?
Because I just don't get why it's a dependency. Why is it not timestamp?
Okay. So, no, this is good. Okay. So, creatures you control have trample. That's an ability, right?
Yes.
It is granting an ability. So, we agree that this is in the same layer, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, removing all abilities changes whether or not archetype of aggression has that ability in the first place, right? Like if we apply dress down first, the ability
Before
creatures you
archetype
control
comes
have
in,
trample.
before archetype comes into the battlefield.
No, they're both on the battlefield. We're just worried about timestamps at this particular point, right?
Then that right.
Okay, so
Right,
let's
makes sense.
let's okay. But even if we switch the order, just if you look at those two abilities, so both cards are on the battlefield, does not matter which order. Okay? At this point, I'm just going to say if I were to apply dress down first, it removes creatures you control have trample. Doesn't exist. Right? That
Right.
ability disappears.
Right, when it comes in. Right.
Not when it comes in. Just let's just say the two permanents are on the battlefield.
Okay.
Okay? They exist on the battlefield, does not matter what order. Okay?
Dress down blanks the other.
Dress down blanks archetype.
Right.
So since dress down blanks archetype, dress down has to be applied first, regardless of timestamp, regardless of whether it was archetype then dress down or dress down then archetype. If you have a situation where one effect destroys the other, and there was a list of things that it did, but getting rid of the effect is one of the things, then you always apply the one that gets rid of the other effect first.
And then the other effect doesn't happen because it's just
And then the other effect can't happen. Right.
okay.
Okay. So one of the other ones is if it changes what the other could impact, and that was the if like going back to the control magic example, right?
Yeah.
The confiscating the control magic changes what the control magic affects or how it affects that object. So it's a dependency also. Now this is not quite the same as like, oh, I've got two effects, one that says loses flying, one that says gains flying, one destroys the other. In the Spider-Man Colossus Hammer example, it doesn't really, because you can lose flying without ever having flying, and I can gain flying while I still have flying. So it's just, I can just sit there and gain and lose, gain and lose, gain and lose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
So we've gone through all of the different upper level type stuff, the way I think about it. And now we're going to get into the power and toughness effects. And power and toughness effects breaks out into 4 subcategories. And the subcategories are CDA, which are characteristic defining effects, setting, power modifying counters, and power and toughness switching. So layer 7A, there are effects from CDAs that define things like power and toughness. And for examples of that, we think of Tarmogoyf or Cosmogoyf. When we look at the power and toughness box, there are asterisks in there. And characteristic defining abilities, they work in all zones. They convey information that would normally be found elsewhere on an object. And in this instance, the CDA in the rules text tells us what should be in either of these Goyf's power and toughness boxes. that applies outside the game as well. So when trying to figure out a creature's power and toughness, we first look at the CDAs. And Tarmogoyf will just take that. It has a star/1+ star, which means its power, if its power is 3, then its toughness is 4. And that would exist in all zones. If it's in the graveyard, it still sees itself as a 3/4.
I love mathematical formulas in my power and toughness text box.
Isn't it great? At least it's an easy one. N and N+1 is not hard.
That's right.
7B, yeah. 7B are effects that set power and toughness to a specific number, including the base power and toughness. So your turns to frogs, your witness protections, and so forth. Godhead of Awe is another example. So turn to frog is a classic one. We've seen it so many times and reprinted a bunch. And it has until end of turn, a target creature loses all abilities, becomes a blue, which is the color, frog, which is type, and base power and toughness of 1/1. So it's being set at 1/1. For 7C, we have effects and counters that modify power and toughness. These are your walking ballistas, your wall of roots, giant growths, things that will modify the power and toughness from what it already is. This used to be 2 separate layers a long time ago. Actually, not that long ago. What? I guess 4 or 5 years, something like that was when it changed.
It was like 8 or 9 at this point.
Oh, really? Wow, yeah. I'm old. So it used to be that we treated counters separately from effects, but we don't do that anymore. We just jumble it all together because really it's the same thing happening, just different avenues to do it. And then lastly, we have 7D, which are effects that switch a creature's power and toughness. And that's when these are applied. The example that's always used over and over again are either Wandering Fumarole or Inside Out. The reason we wait until the end to switch is because if you switch somewhere in the middle, wonky things happen. So the last effect is switching the creature's power and toughness, which is often one of those tricky judge questions. Whenever you hear Wandering Fumarole or Inside Out, just remember that you're doing that thing last. Make all the other changes to power and toughness, and then switch it.
Right. With the power and toughness switching effects, you've either got to do it first or you got to do it last. Okay.
You're either first or you're last.
Yep. You either got to do it first or you got to do it last. And there are some very old cards that originally say something like switch power and toughness, do this after all other effects are applied. So like keeping old card templating kind of leads you towards doing it last.
All right, and I bet you think that's where we were going to finish off with continuous effects and layers. However, there is something that we will refer to affectionately as the secret 8th layer. But I promise you, it's not actually a secret 8th layer. There are only 7 layers when you're thinking of the interaction of continuous effects. However, all of the continuous effects that we've talked about in layers 1 through 7 right now, all affect objects in the game. They can be cards in your hand, permanents on the battlefield, cards in your library or graveyard, an object like a spell in a stack, or a token, or a copy of a spell. These are all objects, but there are continuous effects that will affect game rules rather than objects. So you do have to have some system in place to be able to determine how those interact. For example, some effects may modify a player's maximum hand size, like Jin-Gataxia's Core Augur, or things like Venser's Journal and Reliquary Tower. Or they might have game rules that say a creature must attack this turn if able. All of these effects are applied after all of your other continuous effects have been applied, which is why we call it the 8th layer. Now, there are also some continuous effects that will apply to the cost of spells or abilities, such as ones that are generated by Trinisphere or Thalia, Garden of Thraben. These continuous effects are applied according to the order that we talk about when you're casting the spell, when you're calculating the cost of casting a spell, which is cost increases, cost reductions, and then finally the Trinisphere check. And then after that, Every other effect that could be considered is just going to be applied in timestamp order, regardless of what it actually is applying to. So let's say I have an effect that says maximum hand size for my opponents is reduced by 7, and I have an unlimited hand size because of my Venser's Journal, and I have an effect that says all creatures must attack each turn if able. I just lay those out 1, 2, 3, timestamp 1, 2, 3. That is how they apply. Pretty straightforward. Not something we're going to dive any really deeper into because this is the most straightforward of these types of effects.
All right. So that's all the layers individually. And now let's start combining all this stuff. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is identify all the appropriate timestamps. Okay. I'm going to, up on the screen, there's a Stenzia Masquerade, a Bloodmark Mentor, and a Dreadwing Scavenger. Okay, those have abilities that says attacking creatures you control have first strike. Red creatures you control have first strike. Dreadwing Scavenger says this creature gets +1/+1 and has Death Touch as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. Those abilities don't turn on when a creature starts attacking, or when a creature becomes red, or when a creature, or when you get Threshold. Now, when I say it doesn't turn on, obviously it starts applying. Like attacking creatures you control have first strike. When they attack, suddenly they have first strike. But the timestamp of that ability is when the permanent entered the battlefield, not when you started attacking, or when the creature became red, or when you got Threshold. Okay.
Right. Because when you're attacking
Kaito
is when you get an attacking creature. So then you can actually apply it, but it was always there just waiting for you to have an attacking creature, right?
Right. The continuous effect that's saying, I'm trying to give things first strike, is applying right now. With Dreadwing Scavenger, it's trying to give +1 and +1/+1 and Death Touch. That continuous effect is trying to do stuff since it began. It doesn't get the timestamp of when you hit Threshold. Okay. Kaito, Bane of Nightmare, says during your turn, as long as Kaito has 1 or more loyalty counters, he's a 3/4 ninja and has hexproof. That ability, its timestamp is when Kaito entered the battlefield, not start of your turn and resets every turn. Right?
Kaito, Bane of Judges.
Yeah. So now that we know everything about timestamps, we figure out all the timestamps. We want to start breaking down the abilities into their appropriate layers. So what are the layers of Kaito? The one that we just talked about.
Sure. Kaito in layer 4, it's a ninja creature. So it becomes a ninja creature instead of the legendary planeswalker Kaito. In layer 6, it has hexproof. And then layer 7B, which we were talking about just a moment ago, makes it a 3/4.
Yep. So we figure out that timestamp, not timestamp. We figure out those abilities. What about Mutavault? Card like Mutavault, because Lorwyn's going to be coming up soon. Mutavault, they got Mutavault tokens. What's Mutavault?
And Mutavault,
the activated ability. Yeah.
Right. The activated ability turns it into layer 4, a creature with all creature types, and layer 7B again sets it as a 2/2.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah.
Why does Mutavault not become a 2/2 creature with Changeling? Because Changeling also gives all creature types. Why does Mutavault not give it Changeling?
I know I heard this at one point in time, and it wasn't that long ago, but I don't actually recall. I know that there's a logical reason behind it. There's some kind of
Okay. Well, what would be if I gave it Changeling?
Yeah.
What layer would I be giving?
Oh yeah,
it
it's a layer
in?
issue. Right. Well, it's an ability, right? It's not
right. So what layer is that?
It's layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Layer 6.
Layer 6.
Okay. Layer 6. All right. So if we gave it ability in layer 6, and what does that ability do? The Changeling ability do?
Changeling gives it all creature types.
And what layer do we apply creature type? Do we change types in?
4.
4. And so if we give it an ability in layer 6 that to change
layer 4,
in layer 4,
it breaks.
We've already missed our opportunity.
Yep. Blew right past that window.
Right, because that's what we do, and this illustrates a point about layers that I don't necessarily know if we've been clear about. Is when you apply layers, you do layer one, you apply timestamp, you do things by timestamp. Then you go to layer two, you do things by timestamps and dependencies. 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes layer 6, generally almost always layer 6, is going to tweak or modify something. It's the one that causes things to lose abilities. And there were abilities that existed in layer 4 that did things. We do not go back. You don't look back. Okay? You just, hunker down and go layer 6, then layer 7. You don't get caught up and say, but in layer 6 I removed the thing in layer 4 to make it do, and that'll become more clear with some examples. But that's with Mutavault. Why it doesn't give changeling is because it's too late to give it changeling.
Yeah. Or rather,
Okay.
you can give it changeling, but it just won't do anything. Will not have the intended result.
Right.
That's cool.
Okay. So Lignify. Okay. Enchanted creature loses all abilities in a tree folk with base power and toughness 0/4. Layer 4, it's a tree folk. Layer 6 loses ability. Layer 7B, it's a 0/4. Witness protection, we've talked about that a ton. Layer 3, text changing layer. We don't have that a whole lot. Its name becomes legitimate business person.
So Krenko.
Layer 4, it becomes a citizen. Layer 5, it becomes green and white. Layer 6 loses all abilities. Layer 7B is a 1/1. When you are doing your layers, okay, when you are combining your stuff, it is very, very important, and you might even need to write this stuff down. You write down the layers, copy, control, text, type, and then you look at the card effects and say, what's in the copy layer? What's in the control layer? What's in the text layer? What's in the type layer? And do this like physically. This is a great way to learn, is to write them down, so that then you've made a list, and I do everything in layer 1, I do everything in layer 2, I do everything in layer 3, and that will help you build your heuristics to figure out the more complicated problems.
Every judge test I've ever taken, I always take a page and just write out a big chart with 7 layers and 7 lines, and then just whatever I'm applying, use that to scribble it out, and just keep everything in order. Because witness protection is actually a great example of this. That applies in 5 different layers. That one ability applies in 5 different layers, and it could potentially interact with other effects in up to 5 different layers. So it's really easy to lose track of all that if you don't take the time to just sit through and meticulously go through one by one by one by one what is applying here.
Also, to drive home the fact that we don't ever go back, you already instinctively know this. If I have a bear cub and cast clone, that clone now has a continuous effect that is making it a copy of bear cub. If later dress down is played, okay, does the clone stop being a bear cub because we removed the ability that is making it a copy?
Nope.
No. So you already know you don't go back in that example. You just and you don't, because it feels intuitive. Okay, we're gonna talk about 1 or 2 examples a little bit later where it feels a little less intuitive, but that's a good example to hold on to. Is you don't go back and say dress down removes all abilities, so it removes the clone's ability that's making it a bear cub. No. Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to take like 3 seconds, because earlier we were talking about how the English language has this formatting, and we talk about things in a particular order when we're applying adjectives, and it's, something, something, something size, whatever. Why don't we do that when we template cards for
What do you
the
mean?
different effects? Why don't we say witness protection, enchant creature becomes a card named legitimate business person that is a citizen that is white green, it loses all abilities and is a 1/1? Why don't we say it in the same order that the layers are applied?
That's a
Oh,
good question. I don't know.
Oh, the reason is so if we said okay, so let's just read this out. So enchanted creature loses all abilities and is named legitimate business person, is a citizen creature that is green and white with a base power and toughness of 1/1. Okay, that's really weird because if we say it's a green and white citizen, okay, that makes more sense than saying it is a citizen creature. Like how do you say it's green and white if green and white comes after citizen?
Yeah, I get it. It's just I just wonder if there's a way to template it so that it's actually saying it in the order of the layers instead of like bouncing around like some frenetic cat.
It's not really. It's talking like you would to a person.
Yeah.
It's not talking to you in the rules of the layers. It's talking to you in like cuz realistically,
Common.
like green and white and color and type seldom interact.
Right.
Really.
It's talking galactic basic. I get it. It's just interesting to me that I would think it would be something that if you could shoehorn it, I think it would.
I think it'd make you sound like a sociopath if you
I
like
think
realistic.
Sociopath.
Well, no,
I mean,
like if
there
you
are
spoke
some
it in
things.
layer order.
Yeah, I
Right?
think there are some things that do have their order that do have a way that they kind of make sense. Like I know, for example, keyword abilities typically have a particular order. Like for example, I believe haste is usually one of the first, if not the first. Flying might supersede that, but like the things you typically need to know about a creature first before others, like death touch, etc. I know there is a specific order in their templating for stuff like that. But I think this one is more just like Brian was saying, the or like Charles said, the galactic basic way of saying, hey, this is the way you describe these things. Because like first of all, it says it loses all the ability, and then it goes on to define what is this thing now. Because if it loses all abilities, and now I'm going to change what it is, I'm blanking this text box, and now let me describe this thing in a way that, like, again, is in a particular order that makes sense to when you're speaking it and when you're trying to describe it, as opposed to the layers, which, if you look at them, like, it makes sense within the rules of the game, but when you're trying to describe it to another person, does not necessarily make as much sense.
Yeah, so if you look at the wording on things, um it's kind of weird because like on Kato it says he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof, whereas on Angel of Destiny it says enchanted creature has flying and first strike and is an angel in addition to its other types. So like why on Kato's example they're making it a ninja first and then saying the abilities, whereas on Angelic Destiny they're saying they're giving the abilities first and then the creature type.
Yeah.
And they probably have rules where that are related to, I don't know, like it's with Kato it might actually just be space on the card. They had to change the templating. They had to reorder things a little bit.
That is also a thing. They will 100% change the order of things for flavor reasons, for like spacing on the card where they might move a word just because it fits into that text box
Yeah.
a little bit easier and doesn't overcrowd certain sections of it, or it lets them get like an extra line of text in there, which these days is very important for Magic cards.
Yeah. Like if you look at it, it says he's a 3/4 ninja and not he's a ninja with a base power and toughness of 3/4. Like
Right.
Yeah.
it's probably because they were running out of room.
Yeah.
Okay.
They probably don't want to be like
I don't want
held
to dwell
strictly
on
to
this
that,
too long.
yeah.
It was just like this random thought that popped through my head. Okay.
No, that's an interesting thought. I actually really like trying to figure
Yeah.
that out because it does make sense. Like, why wouldn't they just make a normalized, templated way to do this? But when you have to shove 18 lines of text into a Magic card net, like you do,
We
now,
we want to do it how it fits naturally and
Yeah.
people.
I
people-
do think they
people
have a
rock it
template.
better.
I do think they have a template.
I believe they do 100% because there's there's interesting things about this. Like Angelic Destiny, it gives that +4/+4 at the beginning, but Lignify sets the power and toughness at the end. I'm sure that there is a pattern to this and a rule set that they have for this that works probably 90% of the time.
Yeah. And if you look at like Dreadwing Scavenger, it gets a +1/+1. It might be that they might even like front load the cool part.
Oh yeah.
Like that might actually be part of the template, is just like with Angelic Destiny,
or it might be front loading the most important relevant information. When you're looking at something that's an enchantment, 9 times out of 10 players want to know what its new power and toughness is. So they want to know how it's being modified that way first. That's literally the most important piece of information.
Yeah, and I think modifying comes before base setting. Like, if it gets +4/+4, you could just throw that up front. But if you're saying end is a base power and toughness 1/1, that seems kind of like an ending of the statement thing.
Right.
it seems like losing all abilities, they tend to put that up front.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay.
Which makes sense when you think about it.
So now that we know how to like break all these things down, let's start combining cards. Marcus, you got a few examples for us?
All right, so here's another example. So let's say you have Arcane Adaptation on the field set to Goblin, because we're sensible, and we return a bear cub from our graveyard to the battlefield with Rise from the Grave. What are the subtypes for the bear cub creature? At this point, it would be a bear, goblin, zombie. Now, let's say we change the order. Bear cub was put onto the field with Rise from the Grave. It then gets Ego Erasure resolved on it. Now, Ego Erasure is a kindred instant with Changeling that says creatures target player controls get -2/-0 and lose all creature types until end of turn. So it's going to remove all creature types, and then you resolve Arcane Adaptation, naming Goblin. What is its creature subtype?
Okay, so we have a bear cub that was put onto the field with Rise from the Grave, and then it gets Ego Erased cast on it.
Yep.
And then I cast Arcane Adaptation, naming Goblin. Okay, so that's the order. Okay, so what we do first is we do copy, control. There's no text, type. Okay, type. I've got Rise from the Grave saying it's a black zombie in addition to its other types. I've got Arcane Adaptation saying it is... Sorry, I've got Rise from the Grave saying it is a zombie in addition to its other types. Then I have Ego Erasure saying it loses all creature types until end of turn. And then I have Arcane Adaptation saying it is a goblin in addition to its other types. Okay, those are the 3 effects, and that is the timestamp order. So, going through there, I have Zombie Bear, then I have Blank Bear, blank, and then I have Goblin with Arcane Adaptation. So, my Bear Cub is a Giblin.
Yep, and a black one at that, because remember, Rise from the Grave does change it to a black zombie, so if we're covering all of our layers here...
Yep, I've got a black O2 zombie. Or goblin, rather.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, black-green, because it says in addition to its other colors and types.
Creature black in addition to its other colors and types. Yes, a black-green 0/2 goblin named Bear Cub. Charles, how does that make you feel?
Happy, because I think that's the first one that would be black-green. I don't know. I'd have to go and look. I know that we have a black goblin. I'm not sure about black-green, though. So, it fills me with a sense of completeness.
Okay.
I love it.
All right.
So we have a dependency that we want to talk about, and we're going to use our friend Arcane Adaptation too. Again, this time, let's say I control Bear Cub, 2/2, and I cast and resolve Arcane Adaptation, which is on the screen now. And it says, as it enters, I choose a creature type. I'm going to choose Goblin. Hey, go figure. I then cast and resolve Drownu's Crusade. And in this instance, Drownu's Crusade is dependent on the Arcane Adaptation applying first. because we set the creature type to goblin, and Drown News Crusade comes in and says all goblins are +1/+1. So the bear cub's going to be a bear, is going to be a creature bear goblin. In addition to the other types, is going to be a creature bear goblin that is a 3/3.
It's also going to be a
It's
zombie.
also going to be black and zombie. Yes.
Yep. So here's what Draw News Crusade kind of sets, and Arcane Adaptation is a dependency. Okay, Draw News Crusade, if we apply it first, it turns 0 bear cubs into goblins. Okay?
And zombies.
Right. Or sorry, it turns 0 bear cubs into zombies.
Right.
0. Okay, if we apply Arcane Adaptation first, Draw News Crusade is going to turn 1 bear cub into a zombie. So that's why there's a dependency, is because Draw News Crusade, depending on whether or not we apply Arcane Adaptation first, Draw News Crusade is or is not going to pick up that bear cub.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love this example. It covers so many different layers. And again, we tend to focus on certain layers when we're talking about different interactions, but Draw News Crusade is covering power and toughness, it's covering types, and it's covering colors. All in one.
All right. So now let's talk another example. I've got out a Magus of the Moon. Okay.
How dare you?
Charles and I are playing, and Charles is playing his Azorius deck and has lots of non-basic Azorius lands. Okay? And I've got out a Magus of the Moon, turning all of his beautiful white and blue lands into mountains.
The disrespect on this show, I swear.
Well, hold on. Charles then somehow is able to draw his one island, his one island. Island saves the day and casts Dress Down. It says creatures lose all abilities. My Magus of the Moon has the ability that says non-basic. It's a creature that has the ability non-basic lands or mountains. So what happens?
Well, I think I get all of my lands back to being what they were.
Well, let's go through it.
Because
we do copy. Is there any copy effects?
No copy effects. No control effects.
Text.
Nope. No text.
Type.
Oh wait.
Well,
non-basic lands or mountains.
Non-basic lands or mountains. Yep. So
I'm getting sad.
All Charles's wonderful Azorius lands are still mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. Then color. Nope. Abilities. We then remove the ability from Magus of the Moon that is making those non-basic lands mountains. Does that mean those Azorius lands stop being mountains?
Hard no.
No. We never go back. Never look back. Always forward. Forwards and onward. All right. So this is one of the examples where we do kind of get an
slightly unintuitive result. Yeah. It doesn't make sense when you just look at it face value and you're presented with these two cards and you ask a player, "Hey, what's going to happen?" They're going to answer. They're going to answer one way, and you're going to have to break down the whole sequence of events and how the different layers interact with each other.
But a thing to keep in mind, though, is these instances are actually fairly rare. These unintuitive situations are fairly rare. And the vast majority of them are so intuitive that these stand out so dramatically because they're so rare. And they're able to be unintuitive because they are so rare.
They are rare, but has Magus been played in Modern in recent events at all?
Oh yeah,
Marcos,
sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Not a huge amount, but it's definitely
not a huge
there.
amount. And Dress Down is absolutely Modern playable and sees a lot of play in Modern. So it's good to keep these things in mind.
It's let's see here. It's uncommon within the total. Or let's see, what's the phrasing? It's uncommon, but it's not rare. It's uncommon, but it's not infrequent. Screw it. Whatever. I'm wasting time trying to figure out.
You get it.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, even if I don't. All right.
All right.
So now we've been building up. We're almost there. to the prototypical layer boogeyman by introducing, we'll say 2025's layer boogeyman. Kato, Bane of Nightmares versus Tishana's Tidebinder. All right.
Ah,
Okay, so Kato, Bane of Nightmare says during your turn, as long as Kaito has one or more loyalty counters on it, he's a 3/4 ninja creature and has hexproof. Tasha's Tidebinder says when Tasha's Tidebinder enters the battlefield, counter up to one target activated or triggered ability. If it's the ability of an artifact creature or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as Tishana's Tidebinder remains on the battlefield. All right. What happens if Tidebinder counters one of Kato's activated abilities? Woof.
all right. Walk through the layers then.
Yep.
Let's look at
All right.
copy
Copy
layer.
effects. Nope.
Nothing. Control layer.
Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing there. Text. Nothing. Right. Removing abilities isn't a text.
Yeah.
It's abilities. So text.
Yeah.
None. Type. Okay, so here we have the ability that sets Kaito to be a ninja creature. So that ability is beginning to apply at this point in the type layer.
Mm-hmm.
From there, color. Nothing messing with the color here, right?
Yep.
No, everything's good there. All right, abilities, layer 6. Here, we have some things. We have gains hexproof because of the ability that was already applying that turned Kaito into a ninja creature. And then we have Tishana's Tidebinder that is telling it to lose all abilities, which, by the way, includes the one that was making it a creature. But at this point, so then what happens? Is Kaito a creature or not?
Yeah, still a creature because we don't go back.
Yep.
Onward.
Don't go back. Onward
Okay.
and upward. He is a ninja
Yep.
creature with no ability that tells you why this planeswalker is a ninja creature because it was removed. But it already applied, so it's a ninja creature.
Yep.
And then we get to the last layer, power and toughness. Oh, snap. We don't have an ability anymore that gives it a power and toughness. What do? Help? Well, actually, we do, because that ability was still applying, and that goes all the way down. So once we pasted that ability in, that goes all the way down the layers, including the power and toughness. So it's going to have that 3/4 power toughness, right?
Yep. Because there's a rule that says if an effect should be applied in different layers or sublayers, which Kato's ability is applied in different layers or sublayers, the parts of that effect each apply in their appropriate ones. If an effect starts to apply in one layer or sublayer, it will continue to be applied to the same set of objects in each other applicable layer or sublayer, even if the ability generating the effect is removed during this process. So what this means is, once I start an ability, I get to finish it out, even if it gets removed in the middle. Okay? So even though with Kato, we are removing the ability that sets its power and toughness, because we started the ability by making it a creature, we get to finish it out. Now here's also one of the weird things, is we were talking about Tidebinder removing abilities being dependent, okay, having to be applied first because there's a dependency. Here, not the case because of that rule. Okay,
That's
this harkens back to that way back in the beginning. I made a comment about when we were talking about. I was talking about how the continuous effect generated by the static ability has a timestamp, not the static ability itself. So here, the continuous effect is the 3/4, the becoming a ninja, the gaining, having hexproof and all that kind of stuff. That is part of the continuous effect. And since that started to apply already, even though the static ability that was generating that continuous effect got removed, we still get to apply, and the dependency it's it's kind of hard
It's
to
not
explain why
applicable.
this works. It's just because it's not there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're gonna have a 3/4. We're gonna have a 3/4 ninja creature. Doesn't have hexproof,
But that also has loyalty counters on them.
but no loyalty abilities.
Right. Fun stuff.
Yeah. All right. So all
Got
this,
another fun one?
we got one more classic, the classic of humility and opalescence. Judge Boogieman. This is the yep.
So
All
for
right.
for all my local players, this is the one time you'll hear me actually answer this question, because most of the time when people bring this question up to judges, they're just bringing it up to just, check to see whether or not judges know how to answer the question, I think.
Yeah.
That's 100% true.
Okay.
It almost never
Really?
comes up.
Really?
Except
Because-
for in Brian's CDH games.
Yeah, because it just doesn't happen. Anyway, it's fictional, completely fictional. Anyway, we have two cards which are literally the poster child for interaction of continuous effects and timestamps. And they are humility and opalescence. We'll take them one at a time. Humility is for 2 and 2 white is an enchantment that says all creatures lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. And opalescence has the same cost, 2 and 2 white. It's an enchantment that has each other non-aura enchantment is a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and toughness each equal to its mana cost. Now let's say they're both on a battlefield. We're not going to say which one was first, but we're just going to break down what's happening here. We have no copy effects. We have no control effects. We have no text effects. We do have a type effect. On opalescence, we have a type effect that sets non-aura enchantments to a creature as well in addition to its other types. So if they're both on the battlefield at the same time, humility is an enchantment creature. Cool. We have no color changing effects. We have an ability modifying effect. On humility, we have all creatures lose all abilities. Neat. Okay. And then both of them are trying to do something. There's no CDAs. There's no, but there is a power and toughness setting effect that's happening, and both of them are trying to do the same thing. Although they're trying to do different things, but at the same layer. Humility is trying to set power and toughness to 1/1, and opalescence is trying to set the power and toughness equal to mana value, which would, for both of them, be 4/4, if that's what wins out. Because they're both trying to do something at the same layer, because they're not a dependency, it depends on which one came in first and which one came in second. If humility came in first and opalescence came in second, then both of them are going to be 4/4s. If opalescence came in first and humility came in second, then they're both going to end up being 1/1s. And that is humility and opalescence. That's it. It's just a timestamp thing, right?
Yes, no, sort of, right?
Yes, no, sort of.
So what the issue is so opalescence is making humility a creature. Okay. And humility says creatures lose all abilities and have a base power and toughness of 1/1. So if humility is a creature, then it loses all abilities, including the ability that causes it to lose its ability, right?
Inception.
It's blanked out, right? So that's what kind of the confusion is. And so you have opalescence setting in layer 4, making humility a creature. We don't ever go back. We start to apply the lose all ability effect, even though we've started to apply it, so it's going to continue to apply, so it doesn't somehow remove itself. Okay, or it does, but it still continues to apply. And then we get into the power and toughness setting where we have opalescence and humility. And this is, to Charles's point, this is where it comes down to timestamp. All right, so it's just boils down to timestamp. And so humility is either a 4/4 with no abilities or a 1/1 with no abilities, depending on whether opalescence or humility came down last. But where it melts, yeah, and so it's not all that hard as soon as you realize it's the effects of humility started to apply, so it continues to apply even though it gets removed in the middle. And that's it.
Wow. Have we do we have any other examples that we need to share? or if we reach the end? Is there like
I got nothing.
nothing?
So
Yeah, no. Then I think we're done.
Yep.
I think we nailed it. Don't have to cover this again for what, another
Phenomenal.
5-10 years?
yeah,
At
just about
least,
that.
at least. Okay, that's great. So generally right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out the show and I'm going to tell you, what we'll talk about next week. But right now I'm not entirely certain. I know that we've got a couple different ideas that are germinating and we're working that out. We also have a plan for what the next few episodes are going to be after that, because end of year we kind of do certain things. Somewhere in there we're going to actually talk about Avatar and we'll do the release notes for that, and I'm really excited for that. I cannot wait. I really love Avatar. I love the property, and I'm excited to see what's coming down the pipeline, and that'll be soon. So until next time, you can send us an email at judgecast@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Blue Sky at judgecast.bsky.social, and on Twitter, JudgeCast. Don't forget to check out our show notes for these links and more, including our YouTube channel where you can find this podcast and our L1 Essential series. And while you're at it, hop onto our Discord server for Judges New and Old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. I'm Charles Feather, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan Perlman, and I wasted about 10 minutes of everybody's time because I didn't realize that Stensia Masquerade was an enchantment and not a creature.